Hello, it's Andrew with Million Dollar Bike. Today we're going to compare the fēnix 7 to the fēnix 6. This is a fēnix 6 Pro Sapphire. This is a fēnix Pro 7 Sapphire Solar. The concept here should apply to all of the different fēnix 6, fēnix 7 models, as long as you're kind of aligning the different trim levels within those models, but maybe even if you're not. Before getting too far into it, I just want to kind of show the watch on my wrist, obviously on my wrist. This is the middle model. It's not the S, it's not the X, it's not the big battery one. My wrist here is 54.2 millimeters. So just, use that as a basic guide. I should note also that fēnix 7, fēnix 6, they're almost identical in size and weight and everything else. So yeah. And if you're just here to figure out if it's worth upgrading your 6 to a 7, I'm going to save you some time. In most cases it's not. There is some nuance to that, but you'll have to stick around for it. Before getting to that, if at any point you're finding this video useful or interesting, please hit the like button, subscribe. It helps the video and the channel significantly, and I appreciate it. Let's back up a little bit to put the fēnix 7 versus fēnix 6 thing in a little bit of context. As you probably know, the fēnix 7 is one of Garmin's latest flagship-ish outdoor recreation watches. The Epix is more expensive, and it has a nicer OLED screen. The cost is in battery life. If battery life is the most important thing to you, then Enduro is probably the one you want. But for the most part, the entire fēnix 7 family is the same watch, just with slight tweaks here and there. I'm not really sure why Garmin classifies the fēnix 7 and Epix as outdoor recreation versus the sport models, which are like the 955 and 255. The 955 is the counterpart to this fēnix 7. From a feature perspective, they're almost identical. The difference there is that the case is a round plastic body on the 955, and I think the fēnix 7 looks a lot nicer, so maybe they classify the better looking watches as outdoor recreation and the lighter plastic body ones as sport. And that is one of the places where I do think the fēnix 7 is a nice great upgrade over the 6. The fit and finish is a little bit nicer. They've added some color options that didn't exist before. Is it worth it? No, but that doesn't mean it's not better. And that's going to be a theme here, because if you break down the fēnix 7, it's just a nicer fēnix 6. The buttons are better, the touchscreen is nice, the finer points are finer. You can see here like this little metal bit here kind of comes down over the edge there where it doesn't on the 6. I think that looks nicer. I like that this has a blue titanium cover there versus the standard titanium color. I bought the fēnix 7 because I wanted explicit HRV numbers that the 955 had. I waited to get it until Garmin had a fairly solid beta with that feature, which also added things like training readiness, cycling ability, Garmin Coach, race calendar. All those things are cool. Well, except for Garmin Coach. That's pretty much useless to cyclists. At that time, there was no hint that the fēnix 6 would also get explicit HRV, and then Garmin added it. Now, it didn't get things like training readiness, Garmin Coach, blah, 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 but they aren't as interesting to me as the raw data. They're nice to haves that make understanding that data easier if you're not sure what you're looking at, which for some folks, this might be the thing that makes it worth it. To be clear, I'm not complaining that the 6 got this feature update. I think it's awesome that Garmin provided the update. I think it's awesome that Garmin is continuing to push additional features to the fēnix 6. They still sell it, so that does make sense. It should get the same baseline feature set as their cheaper sport watches like the 255. But not only that, continuing to provide feature updates to older hardware is a more sustainable model. And Apple has proved that it's not a bad business model either. I just didn't expect it to work like that. They were pretty quick to abandon the fēnix 5, so not the best history with that sort of thing. Before getting into the comparison, let's quickly run through some observations about the fēnix 7. This is not a detailed review. There are people who do that better than me. Just some things I noticed about it while using it. The white on the band here and the white on the body, they're not the same white. That annoyed me at first, but now that the watch is less clean, it doesn't really factor in anymore, although maybe it should bother me that I don't keep my white watch clean. I had originally planned to put an orange band on my fēnix 7, but after doing that and looking at it and living with it for about a week, I actually liked the white, even though it's not the same white, a little bit more, so I went back to the white band. Getting the fēnix 7 to update to release software when I took it out of the box was a major pain in the butt. It came to something that was super old. I can totally see people never getting a firmware update on the device because it should just happen automatically, and it didn't. I struggled with trying to get it to update using the phone and Bluetooth for a couple of hours, but eventually I had to break out Garmin Express on the PC to get it to work. This needs to be better. Many people don't have a PC or Mac, let alone know that Garmin has this massive legacy of PC dependency that they still can't quite figure out how to get off of. And if you don't get past it, you might never get the good stuff that comes with the new firmware updates. The other thing is that you want to embrace the folder. This is a new feature with the fēnix 7. It replaces the old set of glance buckets with buckets you can manage yourself. So things like health stats on the fēnix 6. Let me just show you real quick. So that's health stats. And this is my health folder that I created to replace, or because health stats didn't come with the fēnix 7. You can include whatever you want, which makes it really awesome. You just got to know that, like, you can see there's two numbers here, or if I go to the training readiness one, or the training one, there's two numbers here. Those two numbers, that's the first two items in the folder. And you can put any item in a folder and use it in that way. And it really reduces the clutter on the Glances screen, the Glances widget screen. And so I really like that. Okay, so let's talk comparisons. The fēnix 7 has better battery life, much better. It also charges faster. So when I combine both of those things, it means that I spend about half the time charging the 7 as the 6. That's not to say that the 6 has bad battery life. It doesn't. It has awesome battery life. It's just that the 7 is much better. It's also worth pointing out that the 7 is solar. So you do get some solar charging. You can get a 6 solar. I spend most of my day inside, so the solar doesn't really factor that much into the battery life equation for me, except on the weekends when I do get a little bit of solar charging. I think the buttons are better on the 7. I think they have a slightly better tactile experience. Again, not that the 6 are bad, they're perfectly fine, and I never even thought about it until I got a 7, and I thought, oh, this is just a little bit nicer. The navigation on the screen, I can show you that. Like if I push these buttons here, is a little bit snappier on the 7 versus the 6. Again, not a big deal. Not that the 6 is slow, it's just that the 7 is a little bit nicer. Oh, and this 7 also has a touchscreen, so you can use that to navigate as well. One of the things that is massively better, and it might make it worth it if you're light sensitive when you sleep, is that the optical heart rate sensor on the 7, let's just flip these over real quick. The optical heart rate sensor on the 7 versus the 6 is really bright and it flashes at night, whereas the 7 is very muted. And I've actually been woken up by my 6 like strobing the room, and I hate it, so I always make sure that it's on the wrist really tight. And if I can, I keep my arm under a pillow or under the covers as much as I can so that it doesn't wake me up. Oh, I love the flashlight feature. Basically, if you double tap that, it turns the flashlight on. I have it set to red just because it's a little bit less invasive at night, but you can also change it to various levels of whitish brightness. Okay, so let's have a quick look at what the 7 has that the 6 doesn't. Those things are training readiness. So let's go to my training folder, go to training readiness. We'll talk a little bit more about training readiness in a second, so I don't want to get too far into it on that, but this is something that it basically gives you a number, like a go, no go kind of number on where you're at. You could also get this nice red light, green light kind of thing that tells you in a colorful way where you're at. So backing out to my training folder, you get your cycling ability, which for me anyway, Garmin totally nails this. Is it useful? No, it tells me absolutely nothing I didn't already know. You get the Garmin coach and the race calendar. Those are pretty much useless. Oh, and this is my favorite one, stocks, which I don't know, Garmin, why is that here? I have no desire to look at my stocks on my watch. And most of that is because setting it up on the watch is a pain. As far as I know, you can't do it on the phone, which if you could do it on the phone, at least then it would be moderately useful. But since I have to like type in all of the different symbols on my watch, I'm just not going to do that. Otherwise, the important bits are mostly the same. You get your heart rate data, including resting heart rate. You get things like battery, sleep tracking. Although interestingly enough, while the duration of sleep is mostly the same between the two watches, which is not surprising, the way that it buckets it is slightly different day to day. Does it matter? Again, no. I'm not sure which one is right. I don't care which one is right. It doesn't really matter. Both watches also get VO2 max detection, which is kind of an interesting way to track your fitness level and what you're doing. Some people find this useless. I think it's kind of a nice finger on the pulse kind of thing, much like HRV. And let's talk about that, because that's why I ended up picking up the fēnix 7. Let's go back to the screen here on the fēnix 6, where I bring that up. And I think this is one of the areas where you see some subtle differences. I don't think that it really matters because of what HRV is. I probably should take a second to explain that HRV, or heart rate variability, which is basically the difference in time between heart rate, or the difference in time between heartbeats. And the more variance there, the more recovered you should be. The watches do have different heart rate sensors on them. So there are differences here on the watch. It doesn't really matter what the number is, because if you go into, like, here's a nice little graph, and this actually, quick tangent, is one of the places where you can really see the difference in quality, difference in screen between the fēnix 7 and the fēnix 6. It just looks nicer. On the fēnix 7, there's more detail, there's more colors. So let's just dig in here so I can explain what's useful here. So this is the graph. And what you really want to be doing is looking at your HRV as a trend, not as last night was this or the night before was that. It's more of a trend line to see where your body is for your recovery and within what you can do. If you go in here, and I think if I press this button, or one of these buttons, yeah, that one, Garmin actually tells you like a little bit of information around it so you can get a better sense of what it is. Personally, I'm totally fine looking at that. I think I'm reasonably comfortable interpreting it. This is probably one of those things where some people wouldn't be so comfortable interpreting that. And that's where something like training readiness can come in. So let's dig into the training readiness widget here. And as I mentioned before, you basically you get a number and a graphy thing, which indicates like where Garmin thinks you're at. And it is made up by all of these different factors, like your sleep, your recovery time, your HRV status. Recovery time is based on its guess from the things that you've been doing, your training load. HRV status, your acute load, your sleep history, and your stress history. These are all trended metrics. And I said that word a few times, and that's where you really want it. It's not a day-to-day thing that matters. It's very much a trend kind of thing. So you can go back to back to back, but eventually that's going to catch up with you. I like that this feature exists. I think it's nice that it surfaces that summation because it's much more consumable. And for some folks, that might be the thing that makes it worth an upgrade. If you're not interested in crunching those numbers or paying attention to those numbers yourself, because it surfaces that summation of all of these different numbers like resting heart rate, HRV, sleep, training load, whatever, into that consumable number. Also, I like it because while I'm reasonably confident that I can interpret that stuff, it's also nice to have Garmin double checking my work. So where does that leave us? Well, like I said at the start, I don't think that for most people that have a fēnix 6, the fēnix 7 is worth upgrading to. But if you have a 5 or an older model, it probably is. I wouldn't say that I regret getting the fēnix 7. It's an awesome watch. I really like it. It is nicer than the fēnix 6. It looks better. It has a nicer screen, a better battery life, solar charging, and just a lot of little nice touches that make it a better polished device. But I also think that a slightly less impulsive me wouldn't have it. So I hope you found that useful. If you did, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below and I will get to them as soon as I can. Thanks.